Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our monthly webinar. We are teaming up on a very important topic. I'm pleased to have Jonathan Sano back again with us doing this very important webinar. This is Cybersecurity Month, so in recognition of that, we are doing a cybersecurity webinar with your BBB and partnering with Steady Networks. Like I said, we have had Jonathan on several times now in the last 2.5 years. Like I said, this is very, very critical that you could lose your business with ransomware. We've seen it lately on the national news, but even more recently, we've seen it here in New Mexico, not only in our government state agencies, but we saw where the Albuquerque public schools got held for ransomware, and even one of my board members, their business bureau, their business was held for ransomware. So very, very, very critical topic, and I am pleased to introduce one of our accredited businesses, Jonathan Sano. He's the CEO and president of Steady Networks, and he's going to give us 5 tips to secure your business. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jonathan.
Thank you. I want to start today by just recognizing Better Business Bureau, and thank you, Brian, and the team over there for having us. What we're going to talk about today is cybersecurity, and 5, I think I even have 7 or 8 tips for securing your business. So packing extra tips in this month. I like to start with this quote down here at the bottom: hackers don't break in, they log in. And it's a really good reminder that that hackers are not necessarily like what you see in the movies with the guy in the hoodie, stooped over the laptop and just brute forcing his way in. Really, the main method that they're taking is to find ways to steal usernames and passwords, and that's all of the hacking attempts and successful hacks that we've seen throughout the years have all stemmed from that. So having that awareness that protecting your password and your username is really key to understanding what your defense can look like for your business. So a little bit of the agenda. We're going to talk about a few items in the news, some cybersecurity trends we've seen over the past few years. I'm going to give a bunch of real world examples, and talk about what you can do to defend yourself, give some recommendations, and leave a little time at the end for Q&A. So this is lifted from the news a couple weeks ago. Cyber attacks on the rise since the start of the Ukraine invasion. That was definitely predicted. It's actually been an interesting reversal where you see the sub-headline that businesses that maintain activity with Russia have experienced 1,000% increase. A lot of the attacks were coming from anonymous and people who are unhappy with Russia, as opposed to what was expected to happen. And for those of you in Albuquerque, cyber attack shuts down Albuquerque schools. County copes with ransomware incident. This was a really major event that shut down the school system for a few days while they recovered and had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in investigation. And it was a really big event. Bernalillo County was shut down right around the same time. This one's from February of this year. Toyota suspending domestic factory operations after a suspected cyber attack. This one also from February. Watch out for Lockbit 2.0 ransomware. I clipped this one mostly for the sub-headline: turn on multi-factor authentication, use strong passwords, because that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today and why that's so important. And then I like this one too, which came from December of last year from Steve Martin's Twitter account, where he's telling people to beware that someone sent him an Amazon phishing email. So, I just felt like once Steve Martin is giving cybersecurity advice, cybersecurity has really gone mainstream. Let's take a look at some trends and what hackers are looking for with all these cyber attacks. Overall, this came from Verizon every year or two does a comprehensive cybersecurity report where they analyze thousands of cyber attacks, and you can just see this orange line, the upward trend of financial incentives. So really what these cyber attacks are after is money through lots of different mechanisms. They're very creative in how they attack, but they're really not after the information for the information's sake. They're leveraging information and theft of information in order to extract financial gain. A little more from that same 2021 report. If you look at this blue line, you can see social engineering really spiking over the past few years as a primary method of attack. Second, basic web application attacks, where they embed in typically an ad or something like that, a virus that goes after you. And system intrusion still a relatively high attack vector. Something I like to talk about in terms of what's changing is really not a new thing, but a new way of thinking about cyber attacks and what our posture should be. And there's a new concept that I'd heard inside our industry of IT support and IT services, but I heard it on NPR recently, which made me think, this concept is really going mainstream as well, which is this idea of left and right of boom. And what is boom? Boom is the cyber attack. And so we are living now on a spectrum of basically before attack being left of boom and after attack being right of boom, and we're shifting back and forth between these two axes. And some of the things that we do left of boom is asset inventory, cyber and phishing training, which we're doing here to try to stay left of boom, backup verification, vulnerability and patch management. And then there are things that we have to do after an attack, and we like incident response, intrusion detection, dealing with cyber insurance, disaster recovery, and figuring out lessons learned. And basically, I think the industry is trying to take the shame and fear out of being right of boom, because we are all under attack. We're all trying to do what we can within our budgets to stay left of boom. But sometimes you find yourself in right of boom, and then you got to move yourself back over to the left of boom and see if you can learn enough lessons to prevent it from happening again. But this concept of left and right of boom is I think going to continue to grow. Some definitions that you should be aware of. Hacking is, I think everyone understands, just gaining unauthorized access. Social attacks or social engineering uses deception to manipulate individuals into divulging confidential information. Malware is any virus or Trojan or any piece of software that was written with the intent of damaging devices. Phishing is probably a familiar by now attack via email that entices users to click on a malicious link or an attachment. And there's a concept called pretexting, which is the creating of false narrative to obtain information. We're going to give some examples and go into some details of that. So what are the tactics? By and large, phishing and pretexting make up almost over 90% of the attacks that Verizon saw in their out of over 3,800 incidents. So I think phishing prevention can really be, phishing awareness, I should say, can really be a really valuable tool. So we're going to give you some examples of that. And before we do that, we should talk about why phishing is such a successful vector of attack, especially via email. And you can see here 94% of the malware delivery methods were through email, and there's a really good reason for that. If you imagine here is your server and your infrastructure, you've got your internal documents in there, your client data being protected in your network. You've got employee personal information. You've got what we call the crown jewels, whatever that information is. Email is this drawbridge through all of the protection that you've built that gets opened every day, because you have to communicate with your vendors, you have to communicate with your customers. So you build up firewalls and networks and servers and routers and antivirus and patching and all of this security, and then you open up this drawbridge to email every day. And you have to, so we've got to figure out ways to live with it. We send emails out, the hackers send emails out, and the median click rate for these attacks is only about 3%. So generally 90% of us, or 90% of the 97% of the time, we're not falling for it, but that 3% of the time can be enough to cause all of the havoc that we've seen for years and years now, going back to the dawn of the first ransomware attack. So the anatomy of a phishing attack is that step one, the user, either you or one of your employees, receives an email with a malicious attachment. The attacker uses that to send them to a fake login site or to download malware, and then either malware encrypts the drive, or they've used that fake site to steal credentials, which then they can leverage to steal money. So I've created what I consider to be the 3 cardinal rules of phishing identification. Number 1, understand where is the email coming from. Number 2, understand where is the email really coming from. And I'm going to show some examples and explain what I mean here in a second. And number 3, where is this email sending me to? So some phishing examples. This is one from my own inbox. I received this email, and hopefully you can see my mouse moving here. Let me see if I can get a little red pointer here, just to make it a little bit clearer. So right here, I've got this, where is it coming from? And it's coming from admin. Right there is what I may see. But if I look a little deeper, I can see it's coming from news@thisiscolossal.com. And what that's telling me is that actually a company had an email address which was thisiscolossal.com, and they got hacked. They're the ones who were the original victims. And so we've got to be aware of who it's coming from, which says admin, and who is it really coming from. And then I want to look at where is it sending me to? And so it's got a link down here. And in Outlook, in my online version of Outlook, I can see that they're trying to send me to click on this link, but I've got it circled over here. Where it's sending me to is not Microsoft, it is not Office 365, it is radiourbana102.com. And again, that's a website that got hacked, and now they're using it as a place to stage an attack. So if we're aware of who it's coming from, it says it's admin, so it passes the first test. Who is it really coming from? It's coming from news@thisiscolossal, so it fails the second test because that's not Microsoft sending me a password alert. And where is it sending me to? It's sending me to Radio Urbana, some hacked website, again, not Microsoft. So I can throw this email away, I can delete it, I don't need to respond to it, I don't need to engage with it, which is a question I get a lot of the time, is what do we do with these emails? Really, my vote is to delete them or ignore them, not to report them, send them to my IT. They get it, but they don't need to be engaged with every spam email because the volume is so high. Here's another one, and this one it looks a little different because I'm opening it from within a spam filter that I use. So again, what the user might see at first is it's coming from email administrator, so that's who it's coming from. Who is it really coming from? It's coming from ma.sie@icasons.com. Again, that is not who we expect it to be coming from. If it's something to do with email, so we can just move on with our lives because it's failed the second test. But again, if we want to keep looking into where it's sending me to, it's this upgrade now link. And if I look at the hyperlink and where it's sending me to, it's this long string of information down here, and it's not who I would expect it to be coming from. So it fails the third test. So this little 3-part test, where is it coming from, who's it really coming from, where is it sending me to, can be really effective at solving the problem of spam mail and not being part of that 3%. Here's another one. I've got a million of these. Who is it coming from? It's coming from IT desk 217 and it's allegedly a quarantine notification. So maybe I think it's something I need to click on, a voicemail or something. But again, who is it really coming from? It's coming from D Vaughn at CPOFNYS, not who it's supposed to be coming from. I can move on. But if I want to look at who it's sending me to, I can see this is not the correct address. I can move on with my life. It's failed the second and third test. Here's one that's a little bit interesting because this was from a vendor of ours. So in effect, it passes the first test because it's coming from somebody I know. Who is it really coming from? Well, it really is coming from her email address because she got hacked. And so they use that's the first stage, is once they hack a user, they can use it as a launching point to send out lots of emails to the contact list and move forward from there. But we still have the next test, which is where is it sending me to? And where it's sending me to, if I view on this completed document, view completed document, is also a little bit questionable. They've used this to stage an attack, mminsurance.pori.app. So questionable. Once I click on there, now I start to get this, and they want to send me down this rabbit hole to this website. So that kind of nested document with links to documents with links to documents, a telltale sign, really common, because OneDrive wants to block viruses, Dropbox wants to block viruses. So by having these nested links is another way that very often attacks will happen. So be on the lookout for that. This is one, again, what's the first test? Where is it coming from? It's coming from Amazon gift cards. Where is it sending me to? This one passes the second test, GC orders at gc.amazon.amazon.com. So I'm thinking, well, maybe this is legitimate. So I hover over the link, and sure enough, it's a fake one, channelhomesales.com/something else. It's not coming from Amazon. I can move on with my life. Let me just briefly mention that if you have any questions, feel free to chat them or reach out. I'm happy to answer questions in the middle. It's not a problem. Here's another quick one. I'm almost done with my examples. I just have so many of these. This is one that was a voicemail allegedly, but again, I got this question from a user who said, I got this voicemail, is this legitimate? And I said, look, this is you already know what the voicemails look like coming from your regular system. This one looks totally different. So don't be fooled that you're missing some voicemail just that came from a totally different system. So you got to think on your feet and think logically about how these attacks happen. Pre-texting example. Pre-texting is very similar to phishing, except they want to get you out of the channel of online and typically into a phone call. So this is one that I received that was an invoice I was not expecting, and there's no links. So where is it sending me to? Well, it's saying, if you have issue or any inquiry, reach out to this phone number. I did a little Googling. Where does this phone number take me? Well, here's somebody who actually fell for it, called to cancel this charge, and the person instructed them to use AnyDesk app, an app that installs something on your computer screen, where now they're logged into your computer and they want to put in the bank name and go to the bank account. You can imagine what happens. Nothing good comes from that. So pre-texting is the same kind of scam. They're after your money, but they want to get you typically into a phone call or texting to sort of transact the next piece. Another similar one that I received, got this invoice. Again, there's no links. Where is it sending me to? It's sending me to this, which there's sort of this innocuous phone number at the top. I think the idea is they're subtly trying to get you to call in. This person called in, and they wanted to pull the credit card information so that they could put the money back on the card, so to speak. And again, same sort of scam. Nothing I ordered, nothing I asked for, but if I make that phone call, I'm sort of falling into their trap. So that's another type of phishing attack that we need to be aware of. The same rules still apply though. So sometimes they're trying to get you to download a virus, and sometimes they're trying to get you to log in to a fake website. What does a fake website look like? It looks just like a regular email login site. It's designed to look exactly the same, except you got to be very aware that it's not got the same URL. This does not say office.com. This says agilones.com. And that site was a victim. They were hacked and were not paying attention to their website, and somebody put this this link in the back end to protect themselves from being identified. Here's another one. This one came from PacificRimPizza.com, which was a defunct Hawaiian pizza joint. And when they went out of business, no one was paying attention to the website. The website gets hacked and is able to host these kinds of attacks. Here's another one. You can ignore my massive tabs at the top, but arboroust.men is the site, and they are asking for Office 365 or Outlook or AOL or Dropbox. They'll take any username and password you want to give them. Here's another one that looks like the Outlook page, but it's actually rightblinds.net, same sort of thing. They get attacked, they end up hosting a fake website, like login site like this for a while, until it gets taken down and the hackers move on to a different site. So, typically what we're seeing out there, hackers will often start by targeting low-level employees and then move laterally or to get up the ladder. So they may not be targeting the CEO or the CFO right away. They may be targeting the office manager or anybody else in the organization. They can then string together these phishing attacks. So they may also, like what happened in that example of the vendor that I knew, they may string together a phishing attack to go after kind of a bigger fish and not go directly at them. And spear phishers put extensive effort into targeting a specific person. We've seen customers of ours where the CEO is hyper targeted, where they steal driver's licenses, try to communicate with banks on it, pretending to be vendor, pretending to be the bank's customer. We've seen some really sophisticated and long-term attacks, and so you really have to be on your toes. There's a whole cottage industry out there of phishing as a service where the hackers don't need to know how to write the code to execute the phishing. They can just buy it off the shelf and get tech support like any other product. So it's one of the reasons why it's become so rampant. So let's start talking about recommendations, things that we can do. The biggest recommendation that I have, I always start with this one, is multi-factor authentication for email. It does a good job at neutralizing a successful attack, because even if you give up your password, they need this extra piece of information. So let's talk about what multi-factor is. It comes in a few different forms. There's the first most common form is SMS texting. I say it's okay, and I'm going to talk about why. But when you use Amazon and they text you a code, or you log into your bank and they text you a code and then you enter that code, that's multi-factor authentication through SMS. And it's becoming more vulnerable. We've started to see some attacks that are successful. So it's something to be aware of. It's definitely better than nothing. If you've got it set up, I wouldn't throw it out. But there's these authentication apps that are becoming more popular, and we should talk about how that works. So true multi-factor authentication, what is it? Well, authentication comes in a few different flavors. Type 1 is something you know. It's the most common type of authentication, and it's your password, but it's also those secret questions like your first car, your grandmother's favorite color. If you get asked a password and a secret question, it's not true multi-factor because it's two things from category 1. Type 2 is something you have. When you pair a password with a thing you have, like a mobile phone that's getting text messages or has an authentication app, that's true multi-factor. And for really secure environments, they combine 1, 2, and 3, 3 being something you are, like a fingerprint or a retinal scan. So some type 2 examples, you got these key fobs that have rotating code or a USB stick that gets pre-registered. You've got SMS texting, which I took a snapshot of what that looks like. And then an authenticator app, and there are lots of authenticator apps coming onto the market that let you store lots of these codes that expire every 60 seconds. Recommendation number 2, financial protocols. So one of the most common attacks that we see is something that could be stopped with one high-tech piece of equipment that I'm going to show you right now. That's it. And the reason that is because so many attacks come from a lack of process and a lack of understanding of how these attacks are prosecuted, and the way they work is that and a lot of the financial attacks that I've witnessed personally, they start with a spear phishing attack, meaning they're going after a CFO, an office manager, a CEO, and what they're trying to do is gain control of their email. And now once if you don't have multi-factor, or in one case I've seen them compromise multi-factor, once they're in that email, then they start creating rules to hide the conversations. So the bank thinks they're having an email conversation with the CFO, with the CEO, with the office manager. Indeed, they are having a conversation with that person's email account. And any email that gets responded to, and I've seen this over and over again, gets hidden with a rule. And so they're having an email-only account, with the hacker posing as the CEO, requesting bank changes to direct deposit, things like that. So the bank and payroll company carries on this conversation via email. There could be fake IDs. I've seen forged documents, all of it happening via email. And then in the end, money gets transferred to this hacker's illicit bank account, and you've got 24 hours to fix it. And if you don't know what's happening, chances are it's going to take you longer than that to uncover the attack. And it's only after the money is gone for days or weeks that typically these schemes are uncovered. But where was the link in the chain that could have been disrupted? Well, they start with the spear phishing. If you had multi-factor authentication, you could have likely blocked that email transaction from going through. There are alerts that can be set up on your email when there's a forwarding rule to send an alert. Of course, if it's sending it to the same email account, they're going to hide that as well. But what happens is when they start communicating with the bank for changes, that's when you need to intervene. If you have a policy with your banker, your payroll, your office manager, your CFO, communicating clearly ahead of time that you have to have a phone call to a pre-established number for any changes to bank access or changes to direct deposits, then you've got that documented that they've agreed to that. That's your real saving grace that's going to protect you if something like this goes wrong. So in one case, we've seen this happen with a customer where $70,000 was transferred to a Malaysian bank account, but the bank had a policy that they had to call to make that kind of a change of a change to direct deposit. It was the bank that was on the hook for the loss, not the customer, because they had a written document that said that they had agreed that they would have that kind of a change in person or on the phone, but not via email only. And so it's really important to have those conversations internally with your finance people and externally with your banking vendors and payroll vendors. So a really important tool for protecting your organization. I say do it today. It costs absolutely nothing, and it could have saved millions, probably billions of transactions to hackers' bank accounts. My third recommendation is around patching and updating. You know, as we say, patching is not set it and forget it. It needs to be managed, not just assumed. You need to have a process to verify it's happening. And it's really critical for Windows PCs and Mac OS. Neither of them is immune to this. It's actually the first step to preventing viruses. Even before antivirus, patching is more critical. Most virus protection happens at the patching level. You can, if you want to manually do it on a schedule, you just check for updates in Windows, software update in Mac. Some things to be aware of: there is a difference between the feature updates that come out about every 6 months from Microsoft and every year or so from Apple, and the security updates. The security updates are happening haphazard. And as vulnerabilities are found, they could happen every day. They could happen every couple times a week. They can happen, they're going to come out as they find these vulnerabilities. And so if you're waiting on the feature updates, that can be okay as long as you're staying up to date on the security updates. The reason why people hate feature updates is because they can reduce the speed and functionality of an older computer and force that planned obsolescence to come a little earlier. Updated personal computers tend to last about 5 to 8 years. We recommend a little bit faster 3 to 5 year life cycle for business computers. The next recommendation that I've got is around antivirus. We really recommend that it needs to be on every computer. We talk about security, cybersecurity. If you can imagine, let's say 5, 6 slices of Swiss cheese. The first slice has holes here, here, and here. The second slice has holes in a slightly different place. Third one has slices in a different place. As you start to layer them together, you start to block the holes. And that's how cybersecurity often is. You've got, the multi-factor is plugging some holes. The firewall on your computer is plugging some holes. Patching is plugging some holes. Antivirus is just the next step in the link in the chain, and we've seen antivirus be very effective. And what that means is that everything else failed until the antivirus, and so it really does need to be on every computer. The way we do it for our customers is we auto deploy antivirus as soon as the computer. We've got a process so that and you can do this with a checklist. You can do this with software and have a technical process as well. You need a reliable method to audit the antivirus deployments and make sure that it actually is getting pushed out to every computer. Most commercial antivirus is fine. I always get the question, which antivirus should we use? So here's some examples: WebRoot, ESET, Malwarebytes, Trend Micro, Kaspersky, Bitdefender, Norton, McAfee. There are many, many more. So if your question is, I use X antivirus and is it okay? Chances are it's okay. My main concern for you is speed and manageability. I have seen that some of them are slower. They slow down a Mac and not a PC, and some slow down a PC and not a Mac. And some of them have better manageability. So those are the main things. But most of them are very good about blocking viruses, and a lot of them have added a plug-in for your browser to help block bad websites as well. And there are other layers of Swiss cheese as well. You can bundle them with things like EDR with SOC, which is a more sophisticated endpoint detection and response system. You can add a DNS filtering application that checks every website that you are looking at before allowing you through. You can even do application whitelisting so that only applications that you've blessed are able to run on your computer. So there's a lot more you can always do to take things further. My next recommendation, this is a new one, but so many people use Outlook on their desktops in business environments. I feel that using Outlook on a browser is actually a better way to interact with your email to keep viruses off your computer. When you use outlook.office.com, you're actually opening documents on the sort of on the web instead of on your computer, compared to using the version of Outlook that may come on your computer, which in my opinion slows down the computer, which is one problem. But when you open a document from open an attachment on the local version, there's not a preview like there is on the browser base. So if you can, Gmail has been ahead of this for a few years. They basically prefer you to open email on the browser. Microsoft has built up their Outlook offering to, I feel like, a comparable product. This next recommendation is actually probably one of my highest benefits, but it has a high cost, and more so not in dollars, but in getting it set up and having a clear understanding of how it works. For people who are not familiar with it, I feel like that's the biggest hurdle, is not the cost month to month, but getting used to using this process all the time. I've been doing this for years, and so I'm going to walk you through it, and I think that it really pays dividends if you can use a password manager. So let me walk through the logic of it first. 8.4 billion passwords were posted to a hacker forum. This was from a few months back, and this is happening almost daily. This one made the news because it was particularly big, but these bundles of passwords are constantly being leaked on the dark web being just a place where that you can't get to through a regular like Firefox or Safari or Chrome browser. You need a special browser, but it's essentially just public internet through these other means of access. And the lesson to be learned is that lots of our passwords are probably out there. If you want to look at how to see them, there's a website called haveibeenpwned.com. Pwned being an industry term I'm not going to get into, but the way this website works is you type in your password. I typed mine in, and I could see that I was found in 7 data breaches. So what does that mean? I have some special software that lets me look at which particular breaches were out there. So here's 3 examples from 2020. I could see my email was out there, and this is an encrypted version of my password, and this is the website that it was on. So Cafe Press is a website that made custom t-shirts I did for my company years ago, and their website got hacked. That's where these passwords come from. The Cafe Press website didn't have good enough security. I have no control over that. So the hackers get a big list of the passwords, usernames and passwords, and they publish it on the dark web. So now either a plain text or an encrypted version of my password is out there. So what does that mean? Well, it means that let me go back to that. What it means is that that if I use that same password over and over again, not only do they have my Cafe Press, but maybe they've got my Gmail, maybe they've got my other password, my password for other accounts as well. So to recap, where do the passwords go? They go into the dark web. What can we do to stop this? Basically nothing. The message I want to get across to you is that there's essentially nothing we can do to stop these password leaks from happening. But what we can do to protect ourselves is use a password manager software. And here's the power. Here's a few examples of them, and then I'm going to talk about why they're so powerful. So just like the antivirus, you can use Keeper, LastPass, Dashlane, LogMeOnce, 1Password, RoboForm, Sticky Password, Zoho, McAfee, Password Boss, even the Google Account Password Manager or the iCloud Keychain Password Manager. They work in the same fashion. And what they do is they create a database of passwords behind a single master password. So now all I have to do is not let that master password get out into the wild, and then I'm protected. As long as I don't use that master password anywhere that can end up on the dark web, then this database of passwords is fully protected, because without that master password, nobody can get into this other database. And if I'm using a database of completely unique passwords, because I can't remember 100 or 1,000 passwords, and otherwise I'm going to start reusing them, then this becomes a much safer way to manage passwords. let me walk you through an example of how I set up LastPass, which happens to be the one that I'm the most familiar with, and you can get the sense of how all of these work. So LastPass, this pricing may be a little out of date, but just wanted to give you a sense of what it was when I created this slide. The one that I love is the family one, because I use it for my family. I have one for me, I have it for my wife, I have it for my 10-year-old and my 13-year-old. They are all now using LastPass, believe it or not. My 10-year-old has a laptop with LastPass on it. Or you can have business accounts, and there's some value to the business accounts where you can give them these accounts to your employees. And if you lose an employee, you don't lose all those passwords. You can keep all those protected. So the first step in properly setting these, I see someone saying 8.4 billion. Yes, that was one leak. That was not all the leaks. The chances that your passwords are out there is very, very high. So the first step to properly setting up one of these password managers is to use a unique password. Again, if that password is part of that 8.4 billion, you've defeated the purpose of the entire process. So you have to use this password once and only in this place. It should be complex so that it's not easily cracked. It should be easily remembered. You don't want to lock yourself out of this account. And I recommend using multi-factor authentication on this account as well. So just to walk you through it, you install the browser extension. And this is one of the powers of this process, is that you take it with you wherever you're browsing. So I install this extension to Chrome or Edge or Firefox. I log into the little browser extension, and now I've got it sitting up here at the top of my web browser. And whenever I want to make a new password, I generate a new password that looks something like this. You can see this little link here, generate secure password. Every time I'm logging into a new website, I'm generating a secure password that looks like this, completely uncrackable with today's technologies, and keeps you much more secure than password 123 or Batman 2022. The other great benefit of this is that it synchronizes to the cloud. So you can have a copy on your phone and a copy on your laptop and a copy on your desktop, and you get to take these password databases with you everywhere. LastPass even has its own multi-factor app that lets you back it up to your account. So that's really valuable as well. There's a little bit of emerging tech that we should talk about, something called zero trust policies, which is true application whitelisting and blacklisting. There's always more that you can do. There's always more. You can always keep adding those layers of Swiss cheese to your stack. But there's a cost in usability. You start to limit functionality the more layers of security you put. You kind of make life harder for yourself while you're making it harder for the hackers. And then there's price costs as well. But if you're in a regulated industry working with the Department of Defense or something like that, they keep driving these costs and these security up higher and higher. So something to be aware of. That's it. Those are some of my recommendations. Those are what I would consider to be, if you can get multi-factor, password manager, antivirus, patch management, some of those things in place, you are well. And just the cyber training, the awareness of how to spot a phishing attack that's in progress and just not fall victim to it because you're following those 3 rules, you go a long way to protecting yourself and your business. So that's all I've got, Brian. I'm happy to hang out for a few more minutes and answer questions. And you can chat or turn on your microphone, but
is there a difference between hacking and spoofing?
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean by spoofing, so maybe. Do you know what you mean?
For example, a couple of weeks ago, it looked like my Facebook account was what I always thought was hacked, and I took it to our, and of course it's an additional duty person for us on our IT side, but that I wasn't hacked into my account, but someone had went in and took a picture of me from Facebook, and we were able to even find out the Gmail account that the person that spoofed it, and then sent it out to all of my contacts, saying that I was in desperate need of money and everything else. And, you know, and then I get all of my contacts, hey, have you been hacked? But, is there a difference of it not being actually going into your account to get hacked, but that they've kind of taken a picture and spoofed it? Or is that kind of the same thing as being hacked?
What I would call that is spear phishing. Again, they're taking, there's so many, that's why I said at the beginning, there's the creativity of hackers is boundless. And so they're going to find all sorts of crazy ways. Ultimately, it doesn't sound like that doesn't, let's get back to the true definitions. That doesn't sound like hacking. That sounds like social engineering. And so what they did was they took publicly available information, right? Is that what you're saying? They took things that were public, they never got into your account, right?
Right, they took a picture of me and my grandson and spoofed I guess, and took it to all my contacts and saying that I
How
was in
did they get
desperate
access to your contacts?
through my Facebook account.
Were they in your Facebook account?
They were just friends you know, as my friend on my friends list, I guess.
Okay, so there you go. So yeah, so it sounds like they socially engineered. They said, hey, I've got social trust built into Facebook. I'm going to reach out to all these people who have social trust with Brian, and I'm going to ask for money, and I'm going to leverage this. Now, your real friends would know that you would never do that, I assume. But you know, maybe some of them haven't gone through training like this and aren't quite as aware that this stuff is happening. Hopefully, nobody fell for it. That's classic social engineering and trying to leverage trust, you know, against people. Let me read this question. It says, does that help, Brian? Mel says, I have friends that had their identity stolen 6 months ago. They think they've recovered. Do you have specific suggestions? Well, the biggest thing that I think you should do, and hopefully everyone's already done it, is to lock down all of your credit reports from Experian, Equitrack, and TransUnion. Is that the other one? Forget. That's definitely kind of the step one. It's tough. We've had customers who've had their identity stolen. You know, you want to get a new driver's license, you want to get so that if they've got your driver's license number, but if they've got your social security number, it's a hassle to, you know, go in and get new social security numbers and things like that. Yeah, the main thing you want to be on the lookout for but you may even want to change your bank accounts in some case if they have access to that information, but it can be really tough to recover from. I've heard LifeLock is okay. You know, at least there you can get some financial help if somebody does something. So that's the only type of service out there that I'm aware of that really tries to solve that problem. How often should you perform patch management on your network? You know, what we do for our customers is we have a cycle, essentially urgent patches we're doing every day. We're withholding patches that are not as critical for about 2 weeks, but certainly every month you need to stay up to date on at least a monthly cycle to be kind of in the right state. Have cybersecurity threats increased since more people have started working from home? Definitely they have, but it's just a combination of of time just marching on, and there just being more and more cyber threat opportunities every day. I think, you know, had there not been a pandemic, they still would have increased over the same past 2-year period. But there are some new risks. We've got users who, you know, we don't allow any of our customers, business customers, to allow their employees to work off of personal computers. They need to typically be provided with a computer so that we can do patch management, so that we can have antivirus on there, so that we can have some amount of control over what the firewall is doing on those computers, how they have access into our systems. So one of our recommendations is if you have workers that are employees that are working from home, that they're working on company-owned equipment, that you have this kind of control over. Another question, where's the most secure place to back up your data? Cloud, on-site, or off-site? I have never been convinced that, I've been long convinced, I should probably rephrase, that having a cloud backup is in reality the most secure place to do it. There are so many ways to do that, and it really is almost case by case of how it's being executed. But we have customers that do use Google Drive. We have customers that do use OneDrive and SharePoint. We have customers that have on-site servers that we back up a local copy and a cloud copy as well, using some proprietary systems. And so my feeling is that there's so much redundancy built into enterprise professional cloud solutions that those outweigh the risks of them being public systems. There have not been enough cases of individual, the way they're sort of cordoned off. Again, I can protect my OneDrive or my Google Drive information with an email, a password, and a multi-factor security. So the odds of that not protecting me and getting breached, I've got some control over that. And the odds of me losing my laptop that has the only copy of my whatever data on it, or the hard drive failing, that's very, very high compared to the likelihood of me losing all of the cloud data that I've stored on a professional, Microsoft or Google or Amazon server. So I'm still a big fan, and have been for a long time, of cloud backups. What would be considered the most devastating attack on a network? What would be the first thing to do to prevent it? The most devastating would be and this has happened many times, not to my customers, I'm furiously knocking on wood, but I've heard of many instances of companies that had either no backups and suffered a ransomware attack, in which case you are completely at the mercy of the hackers, or had backups, but it was a simple, in this one case, Windows server backup with a USB drive, without any off-site backups. So they not only encrypted the server, but encrypted the backups. So one of the first things that would have protected them was an off-site backup. We call it air-gapped. Air-gapped meaning there's the network that gets hacked, and then an air gap, and then the backup, cloud backup. So again, getting back to this idea of cloud backups, one of the reasons why they're so valuable is because typically there is a space between the data you're trying to protect and the backup itself. So that is critical, that you've got some kind of process to get an air gap. The old way we used to do it, 15 years ago, we'd unplug a hard drive or a tape and drive it offsite and put it in a safe. That solves the problem technically, but the chances of it being done on a regular enough basis to be the most valuable way of doing it, considering all of the cloud options, just seems very low. Typically what I see is people rotating hard drives that are non-functional, or tape backups, but not often enough to be valuable. So those are some of the things you can do. Having antivirus, having password lockouts on a system is also really valuable. Some of the ransomware attacks that we've seen have been just hackers trying do million passwords until they get to the right one, and that can happen if you if you don't have password lockouts. So there's a lot of layers of Swiss cheese that can prevent that attack from being completely devastating. But typically we see people just not doing the bare minimums. Any other questions? Let's see. Let's see. I think you had one more. Nope, that was it. Anything else, Brian, or anybody else?
Thank you so much, Jonathan. This has been a terrific presentation, so much important information. And I'll tell you folks out there, Jonathan and Steady Networks, he came to our office in October of 2019 and we accredited him that day. And I'll tell you, in talking to him in conversation, he wanted to know how to start doing relationships and doing partnerships. And I'll tell you, through the pandemic and the several times now that you've conducted this very important webinar for us, you are doing everything that we envision, Jonathan. We appreciate you taking so much time out of a very busy day for you with everything going on in technology and the vulnerabilities that we have. These scammers are just getting, instead of having strategic plans on how to do business better, these scammers continue to do strategic plans on how to cheat businesses out of their hard-earned money. So I know that listening to you, I think we have strengthened our priorities and our security, both individually and as a business. And as always, I learned something new from you every time I hear you. Thank you so much.
Very good. All right. Well, with that, let me see if I can stop my screen share. And yeah, thanks everyone, and have a great day.
All right. Okay there, Jonathan. Have a good day. Hopefully next time on Santa Fe, I won't come see your shop.
Sure.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good one, Thursday.